Hello to PyCon from my side. My name is Max. That's my dad. And we've been working a lot on genetic algorithms. And this is a side project with my sister. The whole family have like a bit of a musical background. I wouldn't say forced, but we enjoyed playing some instruments when we were young. And let's hear it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, just to get the correct expectations for the talk, we are not talking about generative AI, but instead we are using search algorithms for finding good tunes. With some rules, I'm going into more details now what they are. So it's not generative AI, and if it's AI, I leave that decision to you if it's AI, because that AI is so an overloaded thing today. So it's almost anything. What we are doing is we are trying to find a counterpoint. The project is called Contrapunctus. It's after Bach's Art of the Fugue, which calls all the individual tunes contrapunctus and something else. So that is the idea. The whole project was conceived, I think it's almost 10 years ago, with my daughter, when I said it should be possible to do a fugue because fugues also have lots of rules. It should be possible to make a fugue from some rules. And she said, let's start a little less ambitious. Let's try counterpoint first. There are lots of rules, and let's try that first. And so that actually was her idea, and she is also involved in the project today. What is the idea? A counterpoint consists of at least two voices. You have a bass voice, which is the so-called cantus firmus, which is usually given, and counterpoint was used for teaching music composition or for teaching improvisation. And there are lots of rules which started out in the 14th century, and after Giovanni Palestrina, he died in 1594. His students were the first to actually write this up. So these rules from that time still exist. And later on, Johann Joseph Fuchs, which is down there, had a variant of these rules. It's called species counterpoint. And these are very detailed rules. You can find them even on the English Wikipedia. And they are so detailed that we can use a computer to check them. So the idea is to use these rules and use some search algorithm which searches for a counterpoint to generate music, more or less. So, as I already said, these species counterpoint rules are also on Wikipedia. And species counterpoint is only one specific example. I'm not even sure we are going to use that because my daughter currently is working on a new set of rules for this, because the rules we are currently having are quite ad hoc. And we are not yet happy with them. So some more on that later on. So we have different rules for the bass voice for the cantus firmus and for the counterpoint. As I already said, specious counterpoint is a special example, and there are other rules. For example, we have also rule sets where you have more than two voices. And currently, we only have two voices. For the terminology, we are speaking, when we have timing constraints in one voice from one tone to the next, we are talking of melody constraints. And when we have constraints between the two voices, we are talking about harmony constraints. So the temporal dependencies within one voice is melody, and the dependencies between two voices is the harmony. Examples for these constraints, for example, a melody constraint could be contrary motion should dominate. That's a constraint that is more or less on two voices. So we want the ongoing melody to not go in the same direction for both voices, but we want them to go in different directions. So one voice goes up and the other goes down, for example. We have harmony rules, which says do not use unisons. A unison is the same tone, except at the beginning or end. So we don't want a voice, the two voices to be the same tone. Otherwise, it's not really two voices, right? And we have combined checks which check both the harmony and the melody checks. And these, one example is avoid moving in parallel fifth or octaves. I've prepared a sound example soon. Why is that? Because an octave is just the same tone, but one octave higher. So an A is again an A. And this almost sounds the same. So when you have two voices playing one the low A and one the A one octave higher, it does not sound like two tones. There are other rules. For example, special intervals are forbidden. One of these intervals is the devil's interval. It's a large quart, a little less than a fifth. So this even today sounds not very good to us. I've prepared an example and I'll play that. So what you heard, we first had the A, then we had the A and the A plus octave. Then we had again the A and the A and the E, which is fifth. And then the last, which even to us today sounded quite not good, was the devil's interval. And I play it again. This is A plus high A plus E, and devil's interval. So that are examples. You have heard this devil's interval. We are quite tolerant to tunes like that today because like many directions of music today are using these things. At the time, some 100 years ago, this was not the case. It was really perceived as very not good. So things have changed. And what we now want with all these rules is we want two independent voices which sound well together. We have, in addition to these harmony and melody checks, we also have rules about the length of notes, what can occur in one bar. I've prepared a slide for that, and we have different rules for the different melody rules for the cantus firmus and the contrapunctus. So there is different things that are allowed in the ground voice and in the counterpoint voice. And what we do not yet have is there are special harmony and melody rules at specific points in a beat, at certain beat positions. And this is something which is not implemented. And what also is not implemented is rules over the whole melody. So we have only rules that say these two voices may not have this harmony, and we have rules for tunes that follow each other, but we do not have rules for the whole melody in a tune. So that's also something for future work, and you will recognize this specific thing when you hear the melodies we have composed. These are the beat positions in a bar. So a bar can either have a long note, like the first one, it's two whole notes. The second line are two beats with a note which is a full note. The third line are again two beats with a half note and another half note and another half note and another one. And we call these first beat positions is always a heavy position. Dum, dum, dum. Yeah? So the first is always heavy. It's in the title. I have not translated these. Schwer means heavy. Halb schwer means half heavy. And the third one is lightweight. So the third line has first a heavy note and then a light note. And the others are just for filling in. But what you see is that, for example, fast notes like the eighth in the last line are not allowed at every position. So inside a bar, these faster notes are not allowed everywhere. They are only allowed in the second position, for example, here. And this beat position stuff is currently hard-coded, so we don't have flexible rules for changing that. We might at some point change that, but currently it's hard-coded, and the algorithm also makes sure that you follow these rules. I want to make a short intro to the music notation we are using. In the English music notation, you have the notes A, B, C. So it's starting, it's in the German notation. Many of you might have German as their mother tongue. It's A, H, C, A, H, C. And in the English notation, the H becomes a B. I've heard that the history on that is some transcription problems and things like that. So in the German notation, the B would be the H 1/2 note lower. And in the English notation, we have B. This music notation is called ABC, and it's a very simple notation that you can learn quite fast with, of course, open source implementations. And it can, on the one hand, create printed music sheets. So you can use it for writing up music and printing it, and then putting it on your piano and playing it. Or you can generate MIDI from it and play it with a MIDI player. I'm using here the MIDI player Timidity, which, as you have heard, doesn't have very good sound fonts. So we call these in MIDI, they are called patches. That's how the tunes sound like when you play them. In MIDI, you have lots of instruments like flutes and a piano and things like that. And it's really typical, for at least for quite some time, it was not cheap for having good musical instruments in MIDI. This has changed, I've heard, when I last held that talk. So there should be good tunes now for MIDI. I haven't investigated further. This uses a key value pair notation. We will soon see an example for that. The nodes are A to G. The big A is used for the tone with 440 hertz. Consequently, the small a is 1 octave higher, so it's 880 hertz. So 1 octave is simply the double frequency. And the Z is for a pause, so we can have pauses in the tune too. And if you need even higher notes than the small a, you can append this sign here. I don't know if I find my cursor. No, probably not. And if you need to go lower than the big A, you can append a comma. In addition, for the length of the note, you append the lengths in whatever is your notation. So in first, we can see it here. This is an example. The L tells us how long our notes are. So it's in eighth. And down there, when you have the music notation, the voices, you have D8 for 8/8. So this is a full note. You can have accidentals. That's you have probably seen that when before a note you have a small b, or before a note you have a hash mark sign. This has a meaning. The B means that the note is 1/2 tone lower, and the hash mark sign means it's 1/2 tone higher. And you can have that with this notation too. The bars in the notes are represented with this bar symbol. And we have a lot more that this notation can do, which we don't use or do not use yet in our implementation. So what we have here is we have two voices, the cantus firmus and the contrapunctus. For the cantus firmus, we have a notation that when it's in the printed music sheet, we print it with a space in between, cantus space firmus. We have the key, which is printed at the start of the line. And then we have the note notation. So in the cantus firmus, that's the lower note, we have D8, which is a D with the length of 8/8, so one whole note. And we can see this here in the cantus firmus. The first note on the second line of this thing is a D, and it's a full note. And this is what, I can play this to you. This is one of the tunes we automatically generated. Yeah, so this is an example of what the system can do. This is a very short tune. It was generated with a genetic algorithm, and it's not very fancy, as you've heard. But the interesting thing with a genetic algorithm, or more brought an evolutionary algorithm is that you can optimize the whole tune at once. So when we, in the future, when we invent constraints over the whole melody, we can do this with a genetic algorithm for these easy problems where every next tune only depends on the previous one and what goes together. The problem is so easy that we can use a depth-first search for it. And the depth-first search usually does not backtrack at all, so it goes through the melody and creates the next tune according to the previous one. Sometimes it happens that the previous one is one where we cannot find another tune, then it is doing backtracking for 1 or 2 notes, but not very far. Otherwise, as you know, when you have lots of backtracking, it takes ages. So on the other hand, the genetic algorithm uses a lot of time because it has a whole population, generates many tunes in each generation, and that simply takes more time. So I'm jumping to the software features. What we can do in the software currently is either simultaneously create both voices. So we are creating the cantus firmus, and we are creating the contrapunctus, the counterpoint for this cantus firmus, so they fit together, and we are creating everything at once. The other option we have is that you specify the cantus firmus, and the system tries to find a counterpoint for that cantus firmus. I've prepared an example for that. We currently have a single rule set, which is quite an ad hoc rule set. I think it's almost 10 years old. It has had some changes also recently, but it's quite old and it's not very good yet. For example, it has a constraint that the cantus firmus should never go higher than the counterpoint currently. And this is not something that should be forbidden. So it unnecessarily constrains what we can do with it. So that's one of the bugs in the current rule set. And it is so that you should not have, the counterpoint should not always be below the cantus firmus. But if it's sometimes below the cantus firmus, it's not a problem. So we have currently support for different rule sets, but only one is implemented currently. And the node lengths, as I've already mentioned, that was this slide, are hard-coded. So we only allow these combinations inside a bar. And this is also hard-coded currently. And the end sequence, which you see here, the last 2 tones are always hard-coded. So, and there are only, in the typical counterpoint, you have only 3 variants for the last 2 tones. And one of them is simply hard-coded here. I'm giving now an example for the when you specify the cantus firmus and you tell the system just compose the counterpoint for it. Many of you may know Hänschen Klein. That's a German tune. And I've used that, transposed it so that it fits with the end sequence, because Hänschen Klein happens to have the same end sequence, which we require. And then composed. When I say composed, you should always put it in quotes, okay? So we let it compose. The counterpoint for Hänschen Klein is the cantus firmus. And that's what it sounds like. I have to warn you first, it's generated with an evolutionary algorithm. And it does not find a perfect solution because Hänschen Klein simply doesn't fit our scheme here. So we have some dissonant harmonies in there. non-harmonies in there, and that you soon discover. I'm playing it again because it always leaves out the first note. I can't change the speed now quickly because it's compiled from the ABC to the MIDI, and would take too much time. But I'm leaving you. We will deliver the tunes and the slides so that you can download it from the website, and I will also have it on my website. So. If you Google for me, you should find that. How is the search implemented? We can see this problem of finding these two tunes as a constraint satisfaction problem. What is that? A constraint satisfaction problem is a problem where you have a set of variables and you try and you have constraints, and you try to find a set of setting the variables in a way that none of the constraints are violated, or you minimize which constraints are violated. So you try to satisfy as many constraints as possible, and this is typically not easy to solve analytically. So you can have first, let me tell you what in that case the variables are the tunes. So the individual nodes have constraints with each other. So that we have harmony constraints and melody constraints, as previously told, and we are trying to find the tunes, the tones, and in the end effect the tune, so that this matches all the constraints. These constraint satisfaction problems are typically hard to solve analytically. So a solution typically needs a search algorithm to find a solution. In the case of music, these are not very complicated problems because lots of composers have found counterpoint solutions in the past. So it's not difficult. We can find many melodies that fit these constraints. But the open question for future work is what constitutes a good tune. So it may even satisfy all the constraints we have and still not sound very interesting. And that is an open question. I think it's an open question for music generally, because when two of us in this room discuss music with each other, what one of us finds good may not be liked by the other one, and vice versa. So what constitutes good tunes is something very controversial. And so I say here, the beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. It's really the question what people like. But still, what we currently have, we don't have melody constraints over the whole tune. And that means it is very ad hoc and does not sound very interesting. So what we have here for constraint satisfaction, the pitch, the tone height, so to speak, is represented by a half tone. We implement this with an integer. So we start counting with the A, 440 hertz. It's 0. And the next higher half tone is 1, and so on. And down is -1, -2, and so on. And melody constraints then can be formulated how far the tones are from each other. Same for harmony constraints. So if you have two tones in both voices, they have certain constraints that are allowed or not allowed. And we have combined harmony and melody checks. I've already given an example for that. And we are searching for an ideal combination. And it turns out what we find sounds somewhat good, but it does not really have some pattern that we as humans recognize. So a tune, we want something that we can remember or whatever, and it does not have some of the properties which we like in a tune. The rules have badness and ugliness. Ugliness is a little softer. So we have rules, we say, if this rule is violated, it is worse than if another rule is violated. So if this other rule is only ugly, it's not so bad when it's violated as when we have something like the devil's interval, which we have heard before. So what we want to find is solutions with no rule violations, and I've already said our rules are not very good currently. We can search with evolutionary algorithms or with depth-first search. Depth-first search has the property that it's much faster. I'm now going to play the first several notes of a tune which was generated with depth-first search, which is very long. And we've already, Max and me, made it faster yesterday evening, but it's still more than a minute or more than 2 minutes, I think. But I will only play the first several bars and then make it a little, maybe reduce the volume and keep on talking. Let's see how this is going to work. And what we see now, it's quite repetitive, and I'm reminded of what we call minimal music. So there are music directions which try to minimize what you, and they specifically try not to remind us of any patterns we know. That's one of the goals of minimal music. And you see there are not many patterns. It sounds randomly. It still does not sound dissonant because our rules prevent that, but it's not very interesting in the end. And now I'm trying to get this the volume a little down and see if I can continue talking. Seems to work. So I'm leaving that in the background. Yeah, so I'm quite at the end. I have some fuel for discussion. I've mentioned this several times during the talk. The question is what really constitutes a good melody? And that question is probably something you can write a dissertation on, or even something for a lifelong journey. Many composers were searching for that, so it's not something that is easily solved. And another question, what makes a melody become better? If we allow rule violations, does it become more interesting? So if we have a rule violation and then something that the German word is Auflösung, I don't know what's in English. So when something is dissonant and then it becomes consonant or whatever again, this might be more interesting. So we might want this, or we might even want to require this. That's few for discussion. And the last page, what software were we using? I'm using ABC M2PS. This produces PostScript from ABC notation. This can also produce encapsulated PostScript, and I think it can directly produce PDF. ABC to MIDI produces MIDI output, which can be played with a MIDI player. And as you have heard, the instrument we are using is not very pleasing. So there are better sound fonts for MIDI players than what we are currently using here. The project is online on GitHub. It does not currently have a PyP installer, so you just can't say pip install. But this will be done when we have a rule set that is more convincing. But you can simply install with whatever tools you know for installing a Python project. So I'm finished so far with the talk, and maybe we can have some questions. Hast du? Du hast das Mikro. Ja.
Test.
Jetzt nochmal, ich habe es eingeschaltet.
Test. Perfect. So does anyone have a music background of you?
I don't have a music background, but I definitely want to have a question.
Yeah, can you please use the microphone?
May I give you the microphone, sir?
Give me the microphone, sir.
Question, I might have missed the slide. Did you actually show us what the rule set looks like?
No, I didn't, but I have a link to the software so you can look for yourself. And if this is not understandable, just drop me a note by email. I'm happy to discuss this. So just don't fear to provide feedback. It's very interesting. And so the rule set consists of harmony class, and you can formulate, for example, which intervals between two tunes are not allowed and how bad that is going to be. So you can have different harmony rules where one gets very bad points and one does not get so many bad points. Same for melody checks and for some combined checks, and each one is a class where you instantiate the rule and put it in a big list and pass that big list by name into the algorithm. So I think it's quite straightforward, but I'm happy if you don't think so and want to make it better, feel free to. So patches are always welcome.
One question for the genetic algorithm. Do you use only constraints or also fitness criteria?
The fitness criteria are simply the sum of all badness and ugliness, and we are trying to minimize that. And in the ideal case, it will be 0. And there are no constraints, really. So what we currently do is we only optimizing it's a minimization problem, and we are minimizing the sum of all constraints.
Thank you.
Thanks for the talk. I wanted to ask, are there any special system requirements, and how long does it take to generate material?
Yeah, if you are using the depth first search, it takes less long than playing the tune, so it's quite fast, so better than real time. If you are doing it with a genetic algorithm, it depends on how big how long the tune gets. So it's taking longer for longer tunes. The same applies also to depth first search, of course, but it's less pronounced, so to speak. And it can take the genetic algorithm library I'm using. I'm also holding a talk tomorrow on that. Is PGA-PAC. PGA stands for Parallel Genetic Algorithm. So what you can do is you have to evaluate each individual in each generation in the genetic algorithm, which means you have to compute all the badness and ugliness for it. And that takes time. And you can parallelize that for all the individuals. For example, when you have a CPU with lots of cores, you can make them all busy with evaluating individuals, and it scales linearly up to 16 cores, I think. And then even with 32 cores, it's still a little faster than 16. But it does not, of course, not scale linearly. So when you have, say, 16 cores, that's not much today, I guess. I think it takes for a tune, for this minimal example, it's taking less than 2 minutes or something. But of course, if you have a long tune and a bigger number of generations, or you let it run for longer, it takes longer time. Yeah. So, yeah.
Any more questions?
And just one anecdote on that. For the genetic algorithm, what it did when I had the first rule set for the fitness function, I was just minimizing badness and ugliness. And what it did, it just produced only whole nodes. Because when there are less nodes, you have better fitness. So I needed to qualify that with the node length and things like that. So it can get quite difficult to find the correct fitness function for that.
Thanks for the talk. I don't have a musical background, but I'm really curious. Jazz musicians, when they improvise at the concerts, do we use a similar approach, trying to solve the constraints, or how do we do it?
That's a good question. I don't think so, because it is known from Johann Sebastian Bach that he could play 3 or 4 voices fugue, could improvise that. He got down to the piano. Even somebody from the listeners could give him a tune, and he improvised a fugue with 3 or 4 voices just by sitting there and thinking about it. And I don't think you can have all these constraints in mind and juggle with them. I don't think that would work. So there is, I think humans learn by having larger patterns in their brain, not just very big number of small constraints. You have to think in whole melodies for making that work. And I'm not a brain person knowing about that, but we know from, for example, playing chess or something, that people see the chessboard and immediately know what the next move should be if they are trained to do that. They are seeing bigger patterns and not the individual. If you are starting playing chess, you are looking what this figure has. So you have a completely different approach than someone doing this for a longer time. And I think the same applies to music too.
And the second question I have, do you maybe know some research where the birds using some rules and they compose their songs?
You mean birds?
Yes, birds like...
Very good question. I can't answer that, but it would really, really, really be interesting. Okay, no more questions?
If there are no more questions, thanks for coming to PyCon.
Thanks a lot for coming and listening to me. See you tomorrow, yeah. And I think we have at 6 o'clock meeting downstairs. Yeah. I think there is something in the program. It might not take. Yeah. Okay.
So you have 10 more minutes. Thank you very much.